Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to do a fan request. They asked if I would review any Jordan Peele movie, and so I am going to review all three of his movies for fun, Honestly, I had already watched this movie in, I think, maybe 2020, and then I reviewed it a little bit in my top 10 best or worst movies of the year for that year, I think. But I can't remember. It's a very particular movie to talk about, like with Black Panther and with, like Parasite and movies like that, where, the way that you talk about it dictates what people think about you as a person. And so it's just not a movie that I wish to talk about. I don't like talking about movies like that, but now I kind of do, because I kind of don't care anymore. I mean, I've gone past that to where now it's well, I can say the pros and the cons of any movie, and no matter if I hate it or like it or dislike it or whatever, at least I'm being honest, and at least I know that I'm, a good person, and I don't really care what other people say. So, and I did want to review Nope when it came out, but the thing was that there have been a lot of movies this year where I've wanted to review them, and then I missed the boat. And the thing is, with new release movies, if you don't review it the same day they come out, it's almost like, why even bother? Because I've had several occasions with Cobra Kai, even, where, I don't review it on the same day, so it's 10 views, 15 views. And so with Nope, I was actually, looking forward to reviewing it, but then I had to do something else, and it didn't work out. So, this movie... Okay, let's just start off with the pros, because, I admired the originality of, not originality of the story, but just, I really love it when people who do comedy do horror after. I love it when they do that horror turn and they start doing, dark stuff, like when Steve Carell did Foxcatcher. I really love that. That's one of my favorite movies of that year when it came out. And then several of the actors in this movie, really mostly all the actors in this movie, were pretty good. The main guy, he had some problems, but he's very charismatic, and so he was fine. And then his friend Rod, I thought that he was the star of the movie, and he was very funny, and he was very good. And in my opinion, I would have actually preferred to have seen the whole movie in his perspective, and just see the whole movie of him watching his friend meet this girl and then go there, and then his investigating that himself. I think that would have actually been a better way to tell the story, since it was already kind of based off of something else. And that's what we'll talk about too, because I know that there are so many people that don't even know what this is based on. They don't even know that this was a rip-off of another movie from the 70s, that Jordan said that it's his, he said it's his favorite movie or favorite horror movie. So I loved him. I love the friend. And then the parents in the evil family. I loved the dad. Not in this movie. I didn't really like him in this movie very much. I didn't really think that he had many lines. That's another thing about this movie that was surprising, was I really expected some good dialogue and some good confrontational, back and forth between these characters, and we really didn't get that very much. I mean, it was a lot more of staring, awkward one-liners a little bit, and not really like full-on conversations, except for one character who I despise the most. And I knew that the dad, I saw him in Adventures in Babysitting. He played like my favorite character in that movie, or not like my favorite as in I liked him, but favorite in terms of entertainment. If you guys watched that movie, he had a car and had a license plate that said "so cool," and I thought that was so hilarious. And he looked like a 40 or 50-year-old, and he's dating like this high school girl, and I thought like, ugh, this guy's like sleazy. I mean, he was sleazy in that movie to the max. And so that I was really excited to see him in this movie, but for some reason in all the roles that I've seen him in when he's older, he's not as good. Like I saw him in that Godzilla King of the Monsters, and he wasn't good in that either. He was worse than that though. But then I saw him when he was younger as well on a Malcolm in the Middle episode, and he did a really good job in that, playing this like crazy ex-boyfriend or crazy boyfriend of Susan Sarandon. That was another good thing that he did. And then the wife, I thought the wife was the best villain in the film. The wife, she was so good. I don't know what that was. She had a scene where the best scene of the whole movie was her doing something to the main character, and so she was really good. And then the girlfriend, Rose, not really a fan. I was not really a fan of her at all. I thought she was one of the weakest parts of the movie, definitely, because the whole point of the movie is that you want them to be a good couple, which was, talking about movies with interracial relationships. That was my big problem with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, is that in that movie, the relationship was terrible, and they had no chemistry whatsoever, and they did not work together at all. And so Safi will be coming back to the car. We're at the laundromat, and she forgot to take the money to do the laundry. So when there's a silence, just don't blame me. I'm just waiting for her to get the money. Okay, so that was fast. Anyways, I didn't really like her, and I'll explain why when we talk about her more, for a lot of reasons. I mean, a lot of reasons I did not like her. I thought that, if her role was cast with a better actress, then the movie would be more improved for sure. And then the worst person in the whole movie was the younger brother, Jeremy. This guy, he just plays the same role in everything he does. He's like a 1970s blaxploitation actor who just he's just always playing like the evil, gross, white trash person, and I just can't stand him. I hate it whenever he's on screen. I despise him. I think that he's a weirdo, and not in real life, but just the role that he has to keep on playing. It's like he doesn't have any range, and so he just plays this like really easy role that anyone could probably try to play. And I just hate it whenever he's on screen. He's the worst. I hated him in this movie. He wasn't scary. He wasn't intimidating. In fact, that's another problem that I have with the movie. I had a lot of problems. None of the villains were intimidating to me at all. None of them. And I know it's like, well, you're not that person. You're not in that situation. Well, I don't care. Because the movie this was ripping off, those people were scary, pretty much. So, that's a bit of a problem. So some more pros with this movie. I liked some of the other actors. I can't remember their names. I can't remember the dad's name or the mom's name either, but I can't remember the guy with the hat. I guess he was okay. And then the woman, the servant, she was really good. I liked her a lot. She had some really good moments. But other than that, I'm trying to think, is there anything else I can say that I liked in this movie? It's like, and I couldn't even believe that I watched this a second time, because when I watched it that first time, I'm like, I'm not watching this crap again. But then I watched it and I was like, oh. And so, okay, I guess I'm done. I mean, I just can't hide it any longer. I did not like this film at all. And a big reason because of that is because this is a ripoff. This movie is a complete 100% plagiarist movie, where the director, writer, his favorite horror movie is The Stepford Wives from the 70s, which is a movie all about this woman who's like a housewife, and her family moves to this new city, or new town in the middle of nowhere, and she slowly discovers that like all the women there, they're like turning into like robotic people. And then it's like, oh, it's because the husbands are turning their wives into robots. And it doesn't sound very scary, but that movie was terrifying. And it was very intense, hard to watch. It was creepy. It was so, that movie was on another level of scary. And this movie, it fails on every level of being better than that movie, in terms of like just every single aspect of every element, every film element taken. Like the music in this movie is terrible. It's terrible. It's weird. It's not. It feels like it's not really intrusive enough. It's just so light, and it's kind of like fluff in the background, like a TV show, like as Jordan Peele did after this, a Twilight Zone episode. It needed to be more stronger and more dominant in the story. There was one moment where it was almost going to, but then it wasn't. And then just every element, I mean, every single one. I mean, that was the thing. And this movie won Best Original Screenplay. I mean, what the hell? How could you give this movie Best Original Screenplay when this movie plagiarized The Stepford Wives? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You don't give a movie Best Original Screenplay. I mean, they should have given it Best Adapted Screenplay if they wanted to give it a screenplay award. But maybe they wanted to give it to that other movie. I don't know what won Best Adapted Screenplay, but I just can't believe that. And do you know why they did it? Because it made Jordan Peele the first African American to win Best Original Screenplay. And it's like, I'm fine with that, but for plagiarism, I'm not. Because then I would say, well, maybe he's the first also to win Best Original Screenplay for plagiarism. And I don't think that plagiarism is a good thing. I think that it's very bad. And, usually people, they plagiarize, they get in trouble. But in this case, it's like not a lot of people know, because he didn't make it really that clear. I can't remember if he's ever done an interview where he said explicitly, this movie is The Stepford Wives 2.0, but with black and white people type of thing going on. So that's a problem. I don't know why my voice sounds a little... I'm going to take a drink to see if it helps. We haven't even gotten into the movie yet, really. So, I don't know what I should talk about next. Okay, well, just for starters, it's all about this guy, this guy named Chris, and he's dating this girl named Rose. Okay, let's just roast Rose. Okay, and here was another interesting thing too, was that you could kind of notice that the acting was worse for the younger actors. Like, the acting ability went from really bad to really good, mostly in terms of age range. And so I think that that's interesting, is that it really shows, like, the actors of nowadays, they don't really act very much, they just kind of play themselves. And I noticed that a lot with this movie, because you had another guy, Bill from King of the Hill. He played another villainous character who ends up purchasing Chris, and so that he can use his brain and eyes, whatever. That guy was really good. But he's older, and so I thought that was interesting, how you noticed that with the acting experience and the talent. You notice that the older actors are better than these younger ones who just kind of act like themselves, but with a little bit of a twist. And I noticed that a lot with casting too. That's another weird thing that I've never discussed, is that when I was trying to cast the film before this that I've been making, I was trying to cast this film with Mean Girls. And the Mean Girls were like the main villains of the film. And it was funny because I met all these Mean Girls thanks to casting for that film. And all these actresses, they were exactly like their characters. And the worst example was this one, and she was supposed to play the spoiled rich girl who, she doesn't get very far in the movie. And she's really a despicable person in the film. She was a bold-faced liar. And, like, for instance, when I was discussing having her audition for the film, she made a deal with me where she said, "Marco, if I don't have to audition, I will pay for my plane ticket. And then I'll pay for my hotel room too." And guess what happened? A couple of months later, "Marco, are you going to pay for the transportation and the hotel?" I mean, can you guys believe that? Like, I had cast her, and then, right after I cast her, all of a sudden, "Marco, are you going to pay for my transportation and hotel?" Like, Jesus. Like, just, see what I mean, guys? Like, that bitch, what a spoiled, bratty bitch. And she is exactly like the character that I was going to cast her as. And so that's what I mean nowadays. You have all these young actors, and they're exactly like the characters that they get cast as, that they play as. And so that, so isn't that funny? I mean, I've never talked about, and she did some even worse stuff too. I mean, she wouldn't even do the audition, and, like, she played this whole back and forth game where she asked, like, "Why do I have to audition?" And, like, "Why do I have to do that?" And then she accused me of not being real. And she said, like, "How do I know you're real?" And then she said that she wouldn't be okay with coming here to meet a stranger to film a movie. So basically it's like, "Oh, you've been talking to me for a year, and you just wasted an entire year." Like, just unbelievable. And she was exactly like that character, how I wrote her in the script. It is so weird. It's so weird. It's not, That's, you guys, that's just one example out of, like, thousands of examples of this type of shit that I've dealt with on this casting website that's very acclaimed. So the relationship between Chris and Rose, it's pretty bad. I mean, they don't really have any chemistry whatsoever. You got Chris, and he doesn't really have much of a character. I mean, he just kind of stands there and makes the same facial expression the entire movie. Like, if you were to take a shot every time Chris did, like, this, like, wink, wink, nod, nod to the camera, you'd be, like, dead from alcohol poisoning, because that's what he does the whole movie. And I like him. I think he's charismatic, but he just, the way that he acted in this, guys, you know what's really weird? I'm looking in the laundromat, and these people, they dried their clothes, and they're putting their clothes away, and they're taking every single individual item out of the dryer, and they're sniffing them, and they're smelling them. It's like fucking Jeepers Creepers. It's like when Jeepers Creepers was smelling the people and she's sorting them, and she's smelling some, and it's like she doesn't approve, and so she's throwing them to the side, and oh my god. Okay, let's get back to this movie. Oh my god. I didn't think I was gonna see Jeepers Creepers at the laundromat. And so, anyways, they just do not fit. And Rose in particular, I really hated her in this film. The way that she looked too, she looked like a fucking Roblox character. You guys ever play the game Roblox? You know, with the Lego people? Like, she looks like a Roblox in person. and it's really weird. She is just so. And now here's another thing too that I found interesting, was that in the original Stepford Wives, one of the best horror movies ever made, the main character, a lot of times in the movie, she would have like the sexiest outfits of the 70s on. There was this one time where she was having guests over, and she had this dress where you could just see through the whole thing. You could see her whole body under the dress, and I was like, wow, that is special. Don't need to turn her into a robot. And so, but in this movie, of course, 2017, Rose, she never looks good the whole movie. She never gets naked the whole movie. And so I think it's funny to contrast these films. You know, basically that could be the entire discussion in regards to these films, because the way that you can tell this is a 2017 movie versus this is a 70s movie. 1970s, freedom of expression. Women can look sexy in movies. Women can take off their clothes and make men happy, make lesbians happy, make everyone happy. But in 2017, of course, women can't do that anymore. They have to cover up like they're Muslims. So I hated that in the film, and I know that that's like a small gripe, but it's just something that bothers me every time I watch a modern horror movie. And you know, one of the biggest red flags about a horror movie is that it doesn't have any tits, it doesn't have any ass. I mean, that's just a complete red flag, like, in terms of like the horror movies I want to and don't want to watch. So it does have violence, though, it has some violence near the end. So they don't have a very good relationship, and they're on the road. And right off the bat, they had like one scare at the beginning, which wasn't even really a scare. It was just a loud noise and a person jumping off screen. And that was another issue that I had with this movie, was that most of all the scares were like these jump scares. Typical modern horror jump scares where you hear loud noise and then boom, someone comes out, and I hated that. That happens the whole movie. That's basically the only times they try to scare you, and it didn't work on me, and so I wasn't scared. So that's a fail. That's another fail in this movie that has many failures. So they're on the road, and we have probably the biggest scare of the whole movie. Even though it wasn't scary, they hit a deer. Wow. Oh, God, that's so scary. It's scarier than let's talk about, has there ever been a time in horror movie history where they've used hitting an animal as a scare? Oh yeah. Remember Rob Zombie's Halloween 2? You know, the movie that everyone loves and says is the greatest horror movie ever. Wink, wink. There's a part in that movie where they hit a cow in the road. And that's one of the many things that people complain about. And they say that this movie sucks. They hit a cow in the road? That's fucking retarded. Even though it could happen. So that's pretty funny. It's got a similarity to one of the worst Halloween movies, if not one of the worst Halloween movie ever. Jeepers Creepers is leaving now. Thank God. Guys, you know what was really hilarious? Her boyfriend went to the bathroom, and then she was like walking around to look at the laundry she sniffed, and she tripped over her stuff. I was trying not to look at them and laugh because I was already doing that. I was talking. I was like, sometimes the people you see at the laundromat, they're just, they beat everything. So they hit a deer, and then we have the obligatory, or not obligatory, but the required, every single movie that comes out, movie or show nowadays that comes out that has a black person in it, they all are required, it seems. They all have there has to be some sort of a written rule where filmmakers have to sign, yes, I will have a police pullover scene. So they have a police scene where it's a typical police scene where the policeman acts rude to the black person. It's just a very odd scene because you think about the Stepford Wives, and the Stepford Wives, they have these types of encounters at certain points in the film, and it works. But in this, and Get Out, it's just like out of nowhere, and it's almost like, to me, the only reason why they did it is to set up at the end of the film that the police would show up, and you would be upset that the police showed up. But then, obviously, you find out it's not the police. So, that was another stupid scene. And then, finally, they get to the house. And basically, the rest of the movie it's very boring. It's very, very boring and dull. Taking one of the best horror movies in the Stepford Wives, which was a movie where it did a lot with a little. Like the stuff that happened in this movie, the stuff that happened in the Stepford Wives, like in terms of just trying to think, like the meeting scene where the people meet at the house and they're talking to the wife, and then the leader of the bad guys, he comes into the kitchen, he's just watching her, and he says, I like to watch women doing domestic chores. And it's like, what the fuck? and then they had another scene in the Stepford Wives where this woman, she really wanted to put an artist studio in the house. She really wanted to do a renovation and add in like an art studio, and the husband's like, no, I don't mean you can't. And then off screen, obviously, he turns her into a robot. And then what ends up happening is the next week or day, we see that they have now built a tennis court where the wife wanted a painting studio, and we see that the wife is completely different than what she was before. So we know that something bad happened to her. And then there was another thing. I can just think of so many examples in that film of like all these great things that happen, these horror things that were creepy, unnerving, things that you would question. And in this movie, their version of that is the dad looking at the camera and smiling, and he's like, I would vote for Obama for a third time if I could. And then later on, they're having like a party, and then there's this woman, and she says, so is it true? Is it better? And it's like, that's what they replaced. That's what they replaced the stuff from Stepford Wives with. The genuinely creepy stuff. Like, where this woman, she passes out at the store, she has a breakdown, and she's taken in this ambulance, and they say, the hospital's that way. And then they take her in the opposite direction of the hospital. So you know that they're taking her to the factory to, do more robot stuff to her, fix her up. Like, that's creepy. And, it's better to have this, like, crappy comedy where it's like, ha ha ha, these little cringeworthy things. And that's another thing, too. We will be talking about the political commentary underneath the movie. And so, as the movie goes on, it's just like, this is boring. Nothing's really happening. Nothing's really scary. And it's funny, too, because one of the funny things about this movie, as well as a lot of other modern horror movies, is that this movie likes to pretend like it's superior to other films that come out, like other horror films, like the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre. People said that movie sucked, but then this movie, it's funny because what's one of the many things that people criticize about with horror movies? Oh, they criticize that a black person dies first when they're in a horror movie. And you know what's funny is that in Get Out, who's the first person to get killed? A black person. In the first opening scene of the movie, you see Lakeith Stanfield, I believe, he gets fucking snatched up off the street. Right in the opening of the movie. Yeah. And so, that's just one of the many, 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 many things that this movie, even though people say that it's like elevated, it's like something that's better and bigger than other horror movies, it has all the same bullshit that those other horror movies have. Except it's even worse because it makes things political. And we'll talk about that. So, what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say just there. Let's see. Okay, well, let's just talk about the best scene in the movie. There is a scene where the main character, he comes back in from outside, and he is getting hypnotized by the mother. And the mother, as I said, is the best actress in the whole film, and she hypnotizes him and sends him into this other world, place type of thing. And that was the best scene in the whole film. It was actually kind of creepy, kind of tense. It was kind of suspenseful. That's the only scene in the movie where I felt like this is what I wanted the movie to be. This is what I thought the movie was going to be like. Everything else in the movie is just kind of flat and dull. And it's really because the movie, it does everything wrong. As I said before, it does everything wrong that the Stepford Wives did. Like, there's no character in the movie, there's no villain in the movie who is like the villain in this movie. There's no other villains. Like, all the villains in the Stepford Wives are just, you could picture them. They're real people. The villains in this movie are over-the-top caricatures. And they're just, that they're fake. You know that they're people who, they're characters in a movie. They're playing these characters. You know that they're fake. And another thing that the Stepford Wives had, another thing that the Stepford Wives had that this movie didn't, is that there was a good person. And what I mean by that is that in this movie, one of the many issues with it is that it portrays all white people as bad and evil and just the worst people on the universe, all of them. And to be fair, there are a couple of black people who they portray as bad too, I guess, quote-unquote bad. I wouldn't really know what to call it. They had like this comedic scene where these police are like laughing off the friend, and they're all black, or, they're not white, and so I guess they could kind of be considered evil. Other than that, all the white people in the movie are portrayed as evil, cold-hearted, soulless, like racists. But the funny thing is that in the Stepford Wives, not all the men in Stepford Wives are painted as evil and misogynist and this and that. And the Stepford Wives, they show, it's just the men that are in this town. The men that are in this town that have created this, like, Stepford Wives place where, all the wives are robots. It's just the men here. It's not men all over the world. It's not men everywhere. And so there's this one guy who the main woman in Stepford Wives, she friend-zoned him, and which is not surprising. And she, I bet she regretted doing that at the end of the movie when she gets killed. So, sorry about that. He was a nice guy, and he helped her the whole movie. He helped her with all the problems. He was the best friend character from this movie. So the best friend, his equivalent was this guy that she friend-zoned. She goes to him and helps test all these things, and, he helps her. But he doesn't come and save her because, he doesn't really get to. So I thought that was funny too, because in this movie and Get Out, all the people are portrayed as evil, all of them. And so that was another failed thing. They could have at least had the best friend be white, or somebody be white that's good. But they didn't. They had it be a black guy as the friend. And so it's like, oh, this is like, it just shows that the person who made Get Out, Jordan Peele, I would call him racist from seeing this film. And especially, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which was the brother. The brother in this movie, Jeremy, whatever the fuck, white trashy character, he is nothing but just this sniveling little, like, racist piece of crap, like, just so evil and so, but the way that he's portrayed, the performance, there's no redeeming qualities to any of the white characters in this film whatsoever. Not the same thing in the Stepford Wives. In the Stepford Wives, there are redeeming qualities to all the characters pretty much, except for, like, the main villain and his friends, but, like, the husband, in terms of, like, how in The Girlfriend in this movie, Rose, she's portrayed as completely evil all the way to the end of the film, and, like, she betrayed him. She's, she was kind of acting the whole film. In the Stepford Wives, the husband, he starts off as like, no, maybe I won't turn my wife into a robot, and then as the movie goes on, he kind of gets, he wants to by the end of the film because of how she acts. And that's another thing about the Stepford Wives, is that in the Stepford Wives, it's not just one side is bad. In that film, the woman, the main woman, she does some questionable things. She's weird. She's too free-spirited. She's just too free. You have two extremes. And that's another thing that I liked about the Stepford Wives, was that you had the main villain, he was one extreme, and then you had the main protagonist, she was another extreme. And both of them were wrong. Both of them should not have won. But, of course, the bad guy did in the Stepford Wives. And so, that's another thing, is that in this movie, you don't have that. It's just white people bad, which is exactly what you'd expect in a 2017 film. So the movie goes on and on and on, and I was just so bored watching this movie. I really wanted to like it the first time, but then the second time watching it, like, I realized the stuff that I liked the first time, I was probably being too nice, like, even the first time that I watched this movie, because it was so boring. I just wanted to go to sleep. Like, the X-Files season 11, I watched the first episode for that. It made me so angry that, like, I didn't even want to ever watch X-Files again, but at least it didn't make me want to go to sleep. So, as I said, though, there was some pretty good acting for the most part. And then there's a twist in the movie. There are a couple of twists that just, you can see them coming. They're very predictable, especially after watching Stepford Wives. You know, just as I said, though, all the changes that this movie makes, all of the little tweaks, so that this movie probably doesn't get totally accused of being Stepford Wives, all the changes it makes are for the worse. Like, another thing is, the blind guy, they kind of portrayed him at first like, oh, maybe he's the one good guy there. And then, of course, oh, no, he's not good either. Because he's the one who ends up purchasing the main character. So, that's a problem with this movie. I didn't really find any horror in this movie. I didn't really find anything scary. You know, like the part where he's standing. And here's another thing, too. You know, they talked about how the movie's called Get Out because when people watch horror movies, they always say, get out of that house, get out of that room. But the thing is that in this movie, as soon as he's just standing there in the middle of the night and he's smoking, I think, and that guy just runs into the house and he just runs by him at full speed. That was so hilarious. That was so weird and so random. As soon as I would have seen that, I would have been out of there. And so that's another thing, is the fact that this movie, you have the main character, he's so dumb that he stays there the whole movie, and you know, he's only wanting to leave at like the very end. And then he trusts his girlfriend, even though, you know, and that was another weird thing too, of like, why, if he had this prejudice, why wouldn't he suspect his girlfriend? Because she was clearly evil too. I mean, she never came off as good to me. Even at the beginning of the film, you know, there was just something off about her. I mean, she looks like a typical Karen that you'd encounter at like the grocery store. So eventually he gets knocked out and he's going to have half of his brain transplanted into this blind guy, and he escapes and just kills everyone. And that was weird because of the way that they portrayed it. It was so over the top. It was so like just cartoonishly over the top that it was really racist. You know, the fact that, you know, he's just so violent. He's just so like just over the top, insane, like violent compared to the other characters in the film, even more so than like the villains. Like the brother, he's not really supposed to damage the main character so that, you know, they have a 100% working capacity brain, and so he knocks him out a certain way. He's trying to do that in a good way. So I thought that was funny too. So there are some very racist things in this film on both sides. Like, both sides in this movie were portrayed in, like, this really racist way. And so that was something that I thought... I wasn't expecting that from this movie. Like, I thought, if this movie, I knew that it would probably be racist because it's like a 2017 movie. But it was really racist towards black people and white people at the same time. Like, the way that all white people were portrayed as evil, but then the way that black people were portrayed too, it was like, they're really, like, I don't know, like, this is, to be honest, this is the most racist movie I've seen, probably. This movie, and of course, Birth of a Nation. But the thing about Birth of a Nation is that it was all, like, I think, like a memoir of that KKK leader, and so it would make sense that his perspective is racist because he started out a hate movement, and so obviously his perspective, his story would all be from a racist point of view. But this movie's not far off. Like, this movie is very racist, and it's very inflammatory, like the part where the main character says that he's nervous being around a lot of white people. And I thought, like, oh, God. Because that if I said I'm really nervous being around a lot of black people, that I would be called racist in like 2 seconds. But in this film, that's treated as like, like, yeah, I know, like, yeah, the audience knows. So that's another thing about this movie. The whole movie is like a racist, anti-white propaganda film, along with, like, the other ones coming out recently. And that's the thing that I really hate about this movie, is that it could have been good. It could have been a good horror movie without being racist, without being anti-white. But it just had to go there. It just had to take it to the next level and make everything racist and make everything like, okay, it's clear that all white people bad, all black people good. And then they had it be even more racist, where they pretended that, like, the stereotype that, I guess, that, like, black people have better bodies, they're superior, they have better organs and all this stuff. This movie acted like that was a fact, and it acted like it was some sort of, like, a known fact. This movie was so fucking racist, though. Ugh, it was so racist. It was hard to watch because it was so racist, and it was so hateful, and it was so divisive. And that's the thing that these movies do now. You see movies like this. You see movies like Black Klansman. Instead of uniting people, instead of saying, there's good white people, there's good black people, instead of having a racial, people standing together, instead of that, it's just promoting division, it's promoting hatred, it's promoting violence, especially at the end of this movie. Because that's another thing, too, is that this whole movie is designed so that you can root for the killing of white people at the end of the film, the way that the main character, he just goes from room to room brutally killing white people. It's very reminiscent of actually, I just remembered, sorry, I forgot, the most racist movie of all time is this movie called The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith, and it's all about this black guy who axe murders women and children, and because he's mad about the racism in society, and then he runs away, and eventually he gets caught and he dies. That movie is the most racist movie ever made. But this movie, Birth of a Nation, they're not far off. So other than that, so it's racist, it's a ripoff of Stepford Wives, and the acting is okay, other than that, there's not really anything worth mentioning for the most part. Like, the end of the movie, the girlfriend becomes like the main villain, and she gets killed, and then the best friend shows up, and that was really good. That was pretty funny, the end line there. So, just overall, I don't like this movie. I think it's one of the worst movies of 2017. But 2017 had a lot of bad movies. I mean, it had a lot. Like, just thinking right off the top of my head, Jigsaw, Raw, that cannibal movie that was like an artsy, pretentious porn with the sexiest Garrett's Marillier. Yum, 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 yum. I mean, talk about just wow. I mean, definitely a big step up from Rose and Get Out. That's for sure. So, that's another thing is that this movie really needed somebody that you want to be with to work better instead of the person they got for the role in this film. But to be fair, in the Stepford Wives, her husband is like the most ugliest. Like, he's balding and he looks like fucking Cooper from Night of the Living Dead, and he just ugh. And that was another thing in the Stepford Wives, was that that she was really not very likable. The main character in Get Out, he is pretty likable. He is pretty charismatic. The character in Stepford Wives had a lot of flaws. And so I really wish that this movie would have been better. I know that my review has been pretty scattered, but it's just, I didn't like it, and it's hard to talk about it because it's just so racist and it's so unoriginal, and the problems for this movie really outweigh the positives. So in terms of food, there's this pudding that I get at Kroger that I've gotten before, and of course I think everyone's gotten it. I don't know if you guys have ever had just pudding cups from Kroger. There is a type of pudding that's sugar-free, and it gives you diarrhea, and they have like a dark chocolate flavor. This movie is that. It is dark chocolate, sugar-free pudding from Kroger. And it's just the worst. It's terrible. It's bitter. It gives you diarrhea. It hates you. It hates your body because of the chemical that gives you diarrhea and sugar-free pudding. And just that's what this movie is. But anyways, please like this video, comment so that we can discuss Get Out more, because, this movie is extremely overrated. And then please subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more honest movie reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.